So this is a picture where it's lighting up in the night like a lantern, and it's being used by the youth community to make presentation, do their homework. But above all, the lack of facilities in some places in Indonesia, like in this spot, there is a baby clinic running here and there. So 2 times a month, there is a baby clinic which takes place under the library. So it goes beyond reading. It goes with providing space for the community. So these are some activations that was done in the reading sessions. So it continues to serve. And it was shortlisted in 2019 for the Aga Khan Award. And several have been built afterwards. And this is the one which just got an Arcasia Gold Award in Sri Lanka last month. Thank you, President of Arcasia, who's sitting with us today. He happens to be also in the jury. There were so many submissions, and we are lucky to get one of the awards. So this is another construction in the central of Java. So if you know the city of Yogyakarta, very beautiful, you should go there. New York Times recommended, by a timber project in the country. It's all wood, except for the foundation, and there is more story to it. As you see, the intervention is similar. We free the ground so that it could be used for multiple purposes. But we added some candies here. I will let you know what we add. And on the top, some reading space. So the context is a public park which already has some activities going on. And we installed it near to the road and the river. And there is a village nearby. It's called the Rainbow Village, where all the kids come, and also some schools around it. So that's the Rainbow Village, very near the site, where the kids can come there on a daily basis. So as I said, we put the volume on top, and then this is during the factory visit. This is Florian, by the way, my husband. So we're working this together with the manufacturing company. So when you're designing something, it is important that you're not designing it on paper, but you're also looking at the availability of the material that is able to be produced by the factory. In this way, that you won't get problem on site, that there will be engineers there working with you, and you can also work together in that case. Now, there is a cultural story behind the facade. There are many layers. One is, it's actually a Zollinger German construction, which we kind of twisted into something like this. At the same time, it represents the scale pattern of a dragon in Semarang. So the city has an icon, a mythical icon. It is actually a short dragon, if you like, and they love it. They have festival once a year. So when you introduce the project to the public, who does not care about architecture, they have the story of that. Actually, it relates to their amazing icon. So it's more received this way to the audience, which are the users. At the same time, the performative aspect of the facade is also important, as it reduces the heat and the light that comes in. But we managed to filter it in such a way that there is the amount of light is enough for reading, as well as the cross ventilation is maintained. So we have a curtain, a waterproof curtain that can be opened during the big rain, and we have a net in the middle of the building, so that reading doesn't have to be done sitting on the chair, but you can be on the net, you can be on the floor. And this is the cherry on top, and this we do as also it is actually a swing, and when kids look at swing, they just come. They don't know what building is above. It's not a library for them yet. They don't know it's a library, and that's what we want. That's the impression we want to attract kids to come. And soon when they look at the stairs, they go up, and then they would find the books, and they would be reading. That was the strategy to get the kids reading and interested. So far this is managed very well with the social community, nonprofit community, who's asking everyone to stay clean.
Today is Mr. Hamad Nasser, who's a curator, writer, I would like to invite him now.
Thank you to ADA, BNU, and everybody else for the three-letter acronym. The British Council doesn't quite make it to the third letter, but we're very grateful to be here. Thanks all of you also for coming, because he's been associated with the city. And for the last few years, his sort of artistic reputation has had some booster rockets attached to it. But what I want to talk about is an upcoming project that I'm researching along with the family around to mark his centenary, which will be in 2028. And one of the core facets of that is his career as a designer, because he ran a design studio in Lahore before he sort of established himself as an artist. And to start, I'm going to start with this particular painting. For those of you who can read in Urdu, you will see that the inscription says, Ek daira, a circle, ek murabba, a square, ek muamma, a puzzle. Ek zindagi ise hal karne ke liye nakafi hai. One lifetime is not enough to solve this puzzle. And Shamsa then devoted the rest of his lifetime to actually experiment and play with that circle and the square and its multiple intersections. And that's one of the reasons why I sort of chose this work to start with. For those of you who are for whom Shamsa is unfamiliar, Google image search for sources of inspiration. And they fed. So if you can imagine the secondary school classroom where Shamsa was teaching, and we've been talking to many of his students who were taught by them, many of them themselves who have become designers, artists, curators. Nigel Prince, the director of Artis Mundi, was one of Shamsa's students and recalls that he would give assignments to the class and then sit at his desk in front and like this and then work on his sketchbooks. So I'm sharing a couple of images of those sketchbooks. I don't think we need to belabor the connection between the textile designs and his modality of working with sketches. And you can see the design brain in action here. You can see the variations on themes, the play in color, at this sort of modest portable studio-sized sketchbook. You can see this takes shape. If you look closely, there's one with a tick, and that one with a tick becomes a work. And there's so three different materialities here, that this is sawn off bits of the legs of chairs that he's used to make that composition, which is now in the Tate's collection. And this is muslin on ink, which has been stamped onto paper to create this effect. Another page of the sketchbook where he's playing with this sort of figure, the meme figure. You can see its source from Muhammad, the alternative source also from Mary, his wife. And here you see some of the meme paintings that came out of those sketchbooks. So this is the one that the eagle-eyed among you may have spotted that now is in the Tate's collection. And is currently hanging at Tate Modern. Yet more sketchbooks, you can see sort of cursive forms that gesture towards the Arabic, Urdu, Farsi script. Of course, it's not legible, and that then became the Roots series, the last body of work before his untimely death in 1985. And again, just that play on material. The one on the extreme right is a pyrography. So it has been burnt onto wood. Yet more designs and permutations weaving into different series of words. the square compositions, the love letter series, and the city walls. The city, of course, being Lahore. I'm coming towards the end, and I think what I wanted to just end on was, and these two works date from the mid-70s, and have so far not been shown alongside his work, the painting works. I think they're absolutely exquisite examples of graphic design. The assimilation of the black square takes on a whole different layer of meaning. If you think about the fact that Shamsa was teaching very close to Wolverhampton, where the Enoch Powell, the reactionary conservative politician, gave the Rivers of Blood speech against migration, which is sort of leading to the far-right thinking today. So he was teaching in that school system, and his work was very much in that realm. And thinking about, you know, a design sensibility into the graphics that he's producing. And last but not least, I wanted to actually end on artists working today who are either acknowledging or unknowingly, placing Shamsa in the role of a cultural ancestor. One of them happens to share a surname. Afra is Anwar's granddaughter. Harun Hayward would work in the middle. And then you'd see Shahid Salim's Mosque Pavilion at the BNU. All three artists, I think, whose work is in vital and energetic dialogue with the transdisciplinary practice of Anwar Jalal Shamsa. With that, I'll end now. Thank you.
I think this is just a crash course in transdisciplinary art design. I hope our students know how fortunate they are to get this information and in this manner also. With this, I would like to move to our third presenter, Mr. Shahzad Nawaz, who's a writer, a media guru, an actor, a producer, and a true polymath, and who has been holding his smoke break since the morning. So let's welcome Mr. Shahzad Nawaz.
आज जो मैं बात करूंगा वो हमारी 77 साला डिजाइन का जो मेरा निचोड़ है या कुलिया है, the sum total, 77 years. और मैं आज जानबूझ के इस पे बात करने आया हूँ क्योंकि ये बैठी हुई है और हम इस तरह की तकरीबात करते हैं. मैं तो जी राइट आउट ऑफ स्कूल पढ़ा रहा था और पहले दिन जब क्लास में गया तो उन्होंने सीरियस ही नहीं लिया क्योंकि वो मेरे से 2-3 साल ही छोटे थे. तो मुझे भी ट्रिक आती थी, मैंने पहले ही पॉप क्विज मारा 15 मिनट के अंदर, उसके बाद वो सब फेल कर गया. एंड आई वाज वेरी रिस्पेक्टेड एवर सिंस देन. लेकिन ये शुरू करने से पहले मैं आप सबसे गुजारिश करूंगा कि क्योंकि मैं एक लिबरल आर्ट्स यूनिवर्सिटी में आया हुआ हूँ और शायद मेरे ख्यालात थोड़े ऑर्थोडॉक्स होंगे, थोड़े धकियानुसी होंगे, मैं आप सबसे गुजारिश करूंगा कि अगर आप सब अपनी अपनी कुर्सियों से खड़े हो जाएं ताकि हम कौमी तराने से शुरू करें. सबका बहुत शुक्रिया। ये दरअसल सिर्फ तराना नहीं था, 82 सेकंड्स हैं। ये पता है क्या था? इसमें ग्राफिक डिजाइनर मौजूद था जिसने झंडा डिजाइन किया था, इसमें वो कंपोजर था जिसने धुन अरेंज की थी, इसमें वो शायर था जिसने शायरी की थी, इसमें वो फैशन डिजाइनर था जिसने मलबूसात बनाए थे सदियों से, वो सिनेमेटोग्राफर था जिसने जाके इसको शूट किया, वो एडिटर था, वो साउंड डिजाइनर था, वो कलरिस्ट था, वो मीडिया था, इसमें सब कुछ था इस 82 सेकंड के अंदर। तो फिर क्या हुआ जो मैं कहता हूं कि मैं 77 साल का कुलिया लेके आया। इतने खूबसूरत इन्होंने अभी पहली प्रेजेंटेशंस देखी हैं। मैंने सुना है अदीब, दानिश्वर, सहाफी, हिदायतकार, मौसीकीकार, अक्सबंद, शायर, मेहमान। 1956 में 1956 में पाकिस्तान के सिविल अवार्ड्स फॉर्मली इंस्टॉल हुए, इंस्टीट्यूट हुए, और 1957 में पहली बार पाकिस्तान के अंदर सिविलियंस को उनकी खिदमत के सिले में अवार्ड्स दिए। आज तक मेरी कमाश के, मेरे कबीले के किसी एक फर्द को रिकॉग्नाइज नहीं किया गया। अदीब, शोहरा, पेंटर्स, आप नाम लेते जाएं और हजार है, लिस्ट बहुत बड़ी है। क्लोजेस्ट कोई आया तो पॉस्टुमस हुआ है, वो भी जिसने पाकिस्तान का झंडा सिया था, वो भी उसके पोते को मेहनत करनी पड़ी कि मेरे बाप को, और क्या किया, लोएस्ट प्राइड ऑफ परफॉर्मेंस। तो मैं ये कहना चाह रहा हूं कि मेरी आज की जो गुजारिशात है आपसे, आप जैसे लोग, और ब्रिटिश काउंसिल, ऑफ कोर्स आई एम वेरी हैप्पी यू गाइस केम बैक टू पाकिस्तान, बिकॉज आई बिलीव यू लेफ्ट फॉर 1 ईयर, बिकॉज 47 के बाद फिर आप वापस आ गए तो 48 हो गया। तो बहुत शुक्रिया वापस आने का। आप लोग भी ये सोचें, इसको फंड करें एडीए को, और मैं बताता हूं क्यों। हमें, अगर मैं किसी से अभी यहां पूछूं कि हमारी आबादी कितनी है, कोई बता सकता है? आबादी मेरी नहीं, आपकी नहीं, पाकिस्तान की मजनूई 25 करोड़। और अगर आपसे मैं कहूं 25 करोड़ नहीं है तो फिर और 25 करोड़ लाइक दिस से। यहां पे आप आर्किटेक्ट हैं, आप मुझे इस हॉल की विड्थ बता सकती हैं कितनी है विद योर एक्सपीरियंस?
30-40 feet.
नहीं, 30 या 40, एक बता दीजिए, कुछ भी नहीं है, देयर इज नो रॉन्ग आंसर। 40? आर यू श्योर? 60। अगर अंग्रेज होता पहले वो फीते से नापता, फिर मुझे जवाब देता। हम क्या करते, हमें अपनी तादाद नहीं पता पहले दिन से, देयर इज नो एम्पिरिकल डाटा, हमें पता ही नहीं है कि कितने लोग हैं। जब मैं हुकूमत में था, जब मैं हुकूमत जाने से पहले, तो मैं इस पे काम कर रहा था कि मुझे पता तो हो कि सितार नवाज कितने, तबला नवाज कितने हैं, आर्टिजन्स कितने, आर्टिस्ट कितने, आर्किटेक्ट्स कितने। ये जो पूरी फैकल्टी है, ये पूरी कम्युनिटी, ये जो कम्यून है थिंकर्स का, थॉट लीडर्स का, जो अपने बुढ़ापे में फिर अपने ये सदारती तबके बेच के भीख मांगते हैं कि उनकी टीबी का इलाज कराया जाए, और हुकूमत के पास एंडाउमेंट फंड में 5 लाख फी फनकार देने के नहीं होते। हमें आज तक किसी जमात ने हमारी कुल कितनी तादाद है, कम से कम मैं डिजाइन के लिए तो बोल सकता हूँ, क्योंकि ये मेरा प्रोफेशन है, हमने काम नहीं किया। हमने ऑर्गेनाइज नहीं किया। आसान कर देता हूँ आप लोगों के लिए, मारिया ये आप साथ साथ एक्सप्लेन करें अंग्रेजी में।
Yeah, I'm writing.
अच्छा, ہم نے تحقیق نہیں کی, ان کے تھرو مجھے آج پتہ لگ رہا ماں کے اردو کو کس خوبصورتی سے استعمال کیا گیا. بیکاز آپ کو یہ سمجھنا پڑے گا کہ آزادی کے بعد سن 60 کی دہائی تک ہمارے دستخط اردو میں یا فارسی رسم الخط میں ہوتے تھے. We would sign off in our national language. Right? تو یہ وہی دور کا مجھے دکھا رہے تھے. and I was just getting so, well, a part of me was ashamed that I did not know. A part of me was excited that they were true thought leaders back then, and what a pity that he could not be here for long and he had to leave. ہم نے ترقی کے لیے کوئی تحقیق نہیں کی. There's no research. میں یہ نہیں کہہ رہا کہ کسی کی تھیسس میں, کسی کی ڈیسرٹیشن میں یہ نہیں ہوگا, یا کسی نے اپنے لیول پہ نہیں کی ہوگی. آپ اردو کے فونٹ ڈھونڈنے جائیں, آپ کو عربی یوز کرنی پڑتی ہے جس کے ٹوٹل الفاظ اور حروف کم ہیں آپ کی زبان سے. اگر کسی نے اپنے تھیسس پروجیکٹ میں وہ ٹائپوگرافی کریٹ کر بھی لی, چاہے یونیکوڈ ہے یا کیریکٹر بیسڈ ہے, اس کو آگے لے کے اس نے نیکسٹ لیول نہیں کیا. ہم انتظار کرتے رہے اس وقت تک کہ جب اینڈرائڈ اوپن سورس آرکیٹیکچر لے کے آئے, اور اس کے بعد جو ہے کی بورڈز ملے آپ کو جس کی وجہ سے وہ ایپل بھی فرینڈلی ہو جائے. عربک ہم سے بہت پہلے, ہم سے بہت چھوٹی تعداد میں ہیں وہ جو استعمال کرتے تھے, ان کے لیے پہلے آ گئے. ہم نے تحقیق نہیں کی. یہ اس اعداد و شمار کو شامل کرتے ہوئے میں کہہ رہا ہوں. ایک کتاب مجھے دکھا دیں جہاں میں اپنے وہ جو کریٹو اینسسٹرز کی بات کر رہے تھے, جن کو میں دیکھ کے کہوں یار یہ وہ فن پا رہے ہیں. These are the masterpieces, and of course there are. جو باتیں میں نے نہیں دیکھے کہ تو تم لوگوں کی ایج نے کیا دیکھے ہوں گے, اور اس سے کیا فرق پڑتا ہے, رائٹ؟ کیا فرق پڑتا ہے؟ ہم وہی غلام ابن غلام ابن غلام اپنی سوچ میں ہم ایمیلیٹ کر رہے ہیں, ریپلیکیٹ کر رہے ہیں اس ڈیزائن سینسبلٹی کو جو یہاں کی مقامی نہیں ہے, ہماری نہیں ہے. کسی بھی قوم کی سب سے پہلی موت اس کی ثقافتی موت ہوتی ہے. And believe you, کوئی کتاب ہم نے شاید نہیں, کوئی ایسا, کیونکہ یہ انفرادی طور پہ یہاں پہ بہت آنے والے مستقبل میں بہت کامیاب لوگ بیٹھے ہوئے ہیں. جو آپ اسٹوڈنٹس ہیں جو پڑھا رہے ہیں وہ بصد احترام ہے کہ وہ اتنا بڑا فریضہ ادا کر رہے ہیں. انفرادی طور پہ انڈیویجولی وی آر آل سکسیس اسٹوریز, وی آر آل برانڈز unto ourselves, but collectively I see it missing. مثال, ہم نے مقامی مثالوں کی بنیاد پر لوکل کیس سٹڈیز, یہ آج دکھا رہے تھے نا سلائیڈ, آپ میں سے سب کہتے ہو جی یہ ہم نے فاؤنڈیشن ایئر میں پڑھا تھا. ہم نے اپنے کریکولم, اپنے سلیبس میں, اپنے نصاب میں رتی بھر محنت نہیں کی, تو کیا فائدہ آزادی کا؟ مجھے تو آزادی کا یہ مطلب نہیں ہے کہ مالک بدر آزادی ہو جو چاہے کرتے رہے, یہ آزادی نہیں ہوتی. آزادی ذہن کی سوچ کی ہوتی ہے, اور ہماری سوچ محکوم ہے. لیکن کسی نے بات نہیں کی وفاقی سطح پہ. 2010 میں 18ویں ترمیم آتی ہے, the 18th amendment for the constitution, تو سمجھ آتی ہے کہ پروونشل سبجیکٹ ہو گیا, ایجوکیشن ڈیوالو ہو گئی. 32 مضامین تھے, ادارے تھے, اختیارات تھے جو کہ صوبوں کو دے دیے گئے. ہم نے کوشش نہیں کی کیونکہ who will cast the first stone? Not I, you know, I'll come to that. نتیجتاً ہماری جو تعلیم ہے, उसमें फर्क आ गया। और मैं बताता हूं क्यों हमारे लिए इट्स ओके। क्योंकि अमीर का अस्पताल और गरीब का अस्पताल और है। मैं आपको बताऊं यहां तक के अमीर का और गरीब का सिनेमा भी और है, और हमेशा से ऐसा नहीं था। 70 की दिहाई तक पाकिस्तान में जो फिल्में बनती थी उसमें जो हीरो था वो गधा गाड़ी वाला था, किसी के घर का नौकर था। आज बना के देखें, ये जो फार्स है ना, जेन एक्स वाई जी डी ए बी अल्फा बीटा गामा ओमेगा, एक ही है। नो, इंडिजिनस, मकामी, आपका काम आप प्रिजर्व नहीं करेंगे तो मैं टर्की को देखता हूं कितने बाफख्र लोग हैं, लेकिन जब उनकी सकाफत देखो खत्म। और कहां से शुरू हुई? जुबान से। वर्ल्ड वॉर 1 के बाद जब रिपब्लिक डिक्लेयर होती है, एक शख्स की जाती अना, अगर आप हिस्टोरिक रेट्रोस्पेक्ट में देखें, हमने तालीम इस क्योंकि निसाब पे काम नहीं किया, क्योंकि हम इज्तिमाई नहीं हैं, इनफरादी हैं। हमने जाहिर बात है तालीम पे भी ध्यान नहीं दिया। तो मैं लेट्स से फ्रैंक लॉयड को पढ़ के, या मैं मिल्टन ग्लेसर को पढ़ के, या फ्रेड वुडवर्ड को पढ़ के मैं समझता हूँ यार मैंने बड़ा तीर मार लिया, या मिल्टन, कोई भी। हम कहते हो यार पेंटाग्राम क्या स्टूडियो है, क्या काम है उनका, एंड मैनी लाइक दैट, इंटरब्रांड्स, यू नेम इट। केस स्टडीज ही लोकल नहीं है। आप में से आधे से ज्यादा लोग मुझे आज से पहले ना जानते होंगे ना मिले होंगे, लिहाजा कोई गिला नहीं कि आपको पता ही नहीं है कि मैंने काम क्या किया। एज लॉन्ग एज आपको ये पता होना चाहिए कि अमेरिका बहादुर क्या कर रहा है, वहां क्या हो रहा है, दैट्स फाइन। और कल को हम फिर इसी कॉर्पोरेट फॉर्डर का हिस्सा बनेंगे और चर्न करते रहेंगे मीडियोक्रिटी। वो मीडियोक्रिटी डिस्पाइट इट्स क्रिएटिव एक्सेलेंस मीडियोक्रिटी है, क्योंकि वो कंट्रीब्यूट नहीं कर रही मट्टी पे। तो क्योंकि तालीम हमारी मुख्तलिफ है और निसाब के अंदर कोई स्टैंडर्डाइजेशन नहीं है, तो जो बच्चा आर्ट्स काउंसिल ऑफ पाकिस्तान कराची के स्कूल ऑफ आर्ट्स एंड क्राफ्ट से पढ़ के निकलता है, उसको वो यकसा मौके मुयस्सर नहीं है जो आप लोगों को हैं। आपसे मुराद है कि उन लोगों को जो प्रिविलेज्ड है नहीं है। ये कहने के लिए मैं बस टाइम पे पहुंच गया था। एक जमात नहीं है, कोई डिजाइनर्स गिल्ड, कोई फैकल्टी जो रिप्रेजेंट करती हो कम्युनिकेशन आर्टिस्ट को, ट्रेड बॉडी, वो अवार्ड्स दे तो समझ आती है ना, उसकी कोई स्टैंडिंग होगी, उसकी कोई हैसियत होगी। जो लोग पॉलिटिक्स में इंटरेस्ट रखते हैं, ये आई होप कोई भी नहीं रखता। कल एक पूरे लॉयर्स का ग्रोह पहुंच गया इस्लामाबाद, जो 6 की 6 नुमाइंदा तंजीम थी, उन्होंने कहा कि नॉट पार्ट ऑफ दिस बायकॉट, हम इसके साथ नहीं हैं। सो ये एक मोटली क्रू है जो पहुंच गया है। व्हाट आई एम सेइंग इज, एज अ कंपैरेटिव एग्जांपल, आई एम सेइंग कि वो जो जमात होती है, प्रोफेशनल बॉडी, जब तक वो नहीं होगी आपके या आप लोगों को छोड़े, मैं अपनी बात करता हूं, मेरे इमाम पे बात कोई कैसे करेगा? आप लोगों के जहन में ये सवाल जरूर आ रहे होंगे, तो तूने क्यों नहीं किया? हमारी हुकूमत को निकाल दिया गया और मैं कर रहा था, लेकिन इसका ये मतलब तो नहीं है मैं दोबारा हूं। ये जो इतनी हमारी मोहतरम बैठी हुई हैं, आई वुड एनकरेज यू, दैट्स व्हाई आई केम सीरियसली, कि ये करने से काम होगा। और आखिर में मेरा गिला कि क्योंकि ये सारी चीजें नहीं है, एक शख्स का भी इस हुकूमत ने, इस रियासत ने मुख्तलिफ अदवार में, मुख्तलिफ हुकूमतों के, हुक्मरानों के अदवार में, किसी एक शख्स, एक को ये इज्जत नहीं दी। एक मेरा दोस्त है, तो मैं भी प्रेसिडेंट हाउस में गया हुआ था, मैं बैठा हुआ था, अच्छा राशिद राणा को भी जिस दिन मिला है, तो वो उसको देख के चलो मेरी, तो फिर राशिद राणा ने कहा अच्छा आपको भी मिल रहा है, और दिल में मैंने कहा यार राइट, मुझे मिलना, ग्राफिक डिजाइन करता हूँ भाई, मुझे किधर से मिलना है। तो उस बंदे को मैंने कहा तुम यहाँ क्या कर रहे हो, कवरेज के लिए? कहता नहीं नहीं मेरे सितारा इम्तियाज मिल रहा है। ओ मैं तुम्हें मिल रहा किस चीज का? ओ मैं बता नहीं सकता, चपेट मारेंगे आप लोग उसको, कहीं दोबारा देख लेंगे, क्योंकि वो तो हर बंदे ने किया हुआ है। तो तौकीर की बेतौकीरी कहते हैं इसे, डिसरिस्पेक्ट। हमारा इतराफ नहीं हुआ, लिहाजा आज जो मैंने गुजारिशात करनी थी वो सिर्फ ये सोच थी कि हर कोई ये नहीं कर सकता, लेकिन शायद आप में से चंद कुछ मौजूदा लोग ऐसे होंगे या आने वाले वक्तों में ऐसे होंगे जो कि इस बात को संजीदगी से सोचेंगे। मैंने यूनाइटेड प्रोड्यूसर्स एसोसिएशन बनाने में बहुत बड़ा कलीदी किरदार अदा किया है। ट्रेड बॉडी है रजिस्टर्ड विद द गवर्नमेंट ऑफ पाकिस्तान, डायरेक्टर्स गिल्ड ऑफ पाकिस्तान उसका मैं वाइस चेयरमैन हूँ, और यूपीए का पास्ट चेयरमैन हूँ। वो भी रिकग्नाइज्ड ट्रेड बॉडी है। स्क्रीन राइटर्स एसोसिएशन ऑफ पाकिस्तान इज अंडर लीगल प्रोसेसेस टू गेट रजिस्टर्ड, बट आई फेल people from my faculty जो designers हैं. In the end, my due apologies to all my lovely dignitaries, foreign speakers and jurors who have come here. I could not speak. I feel I'm back pre-1947. So, बहुत शुक्रिया आप सबके वक्त का। पाकिस्तान जिंदाबाद।
Who's the president, Saifuddin Ahmed, who's the president, Arcasia, and the director of S&O Architects.
I don't think you need to apologize. In actual fact, you should be proud of your language. Okay, I think that should be done. Thank you very much. Okay, I actually hold many hats, and of course, Diana has introduced me to be graduated. And today, of course, while we are talking about by design, but I'm presenting my design. Okay, there's a few things like I would like to share with you with regards to my works that I've done in the last 30 years, although I've been as a registered architect for 40 years. Okay, this is actually my very first job under S&O Architects, which is actually a bridge. Okay, meaning to say architect just don't design buildings, but also design structure. If you all happen to visit Malaysia on the Penang Island, okay, this was the bridge that, well, actually the first project that's completed under S&O Architects way back in year 2000, and it actually also won the Malaysian Construction Industry Awards for projects below 10 million. And subsequently, we designed a lot of other buildings, and as we go through, you will note that most of my projects are into sustainability, energy efficiency, and also green buildings. And for information of everyone, when I was president of Malaysian Institute of Architects 2011-2013, okay, I was also strongly involved in the introductions of the Green Building Index, which is actually the green building tools that is being practiced in Malaysia itself. This was a building that we designed way back in year 2002. Okay. Originally, it was meant to be a building for research or science. Subsequently, it's converted into a university. At one point, it was the Sarvajaya Medical University, and now it's part of University Malaya, which I was actually a long time board member of that university itself. And if you note that being in Malaysia, where what they call the climate is tropical, a lot of sunlight, strong sunlight for that matter, rain, that sort of thing. So I've used actually a lot of claddings and louvers to actually diffuse the lights and also actually to actually control the lighting to the building itself. These are some of the interior works, okay? And although the building has been completed for over 20 points, was actually looking into a Malaysian standard for energy efficiency for office building, MS 1525. And we were chosen to be the architects to ensure that MS 1525 actually works. What is meant by MS 1525 is that a building is designed according to the passive element and also the active element, but at the same time you control the energy usage. The cost of the building is a bit more, but the return, the ROI can be achieved within a certain number of years. And it has proven that. Basically, it's actually originally meant to be two separate buildings, but the client actually wanted us to be just one building itself. And we worked closely with the Danish government on the energy effects and also with a university, Technology Mara, who did the stimulation for this project itself. And of course, this is one of the buildings in the Malaysian administrative capital, Putrajaya. Just a quick shows and how we do with regards to the punch windows facing the east and west, showing the reflections of the lights coming into the building itself. And we have the atrium, and of course at the rooftop we have used this as a double roof so that we reduce the direct sunlight into the main building itself, and at the same time the areas underneath the roof can actually be utilized for activities, and in certain parts we have also installed photovoltaics. Just a quick photograph of the building itself. And it's not bragging, not many architects can say that their building are on a stand. My building is on that stand. So it's actually the one at the center, 50-cent stand. It actually commemorates the energy efficient buildings. And I'm proud to say that we were chosen to be on that stand itself. And again, this project won 2 awards. One is the Malaysian Construction Industry Award 2003, and also the ASEAN Energy Awards in 2006. And it came out in many publications. As I said, it was an exemplary building for the government to say that the MS 1525 worked. And not only that, I can say that that building actually was designed earlier than what was designed in Singapore. And in fact, the Singaporean architects actually, and a lot of students came to visit this building to do a case study. And again, not many architects actually design aircraft hangars. Okay, we were fortunate to actually call to do this. And this particular building is actually for the National Institute of Aviation Technology, which is actually part of UST Kuala Lumpur. And is for the students who studies aircraft maintenance. And again, although this building was not rated under the Green Building Index, okay, but the client who actually wanted us to conform to the requirements of the Green Building Index. And on that note, I would say that majority of the elements under the Green Building Index we've actually provided to that. Before I forget, the Leo building was the first Malaysian building that has been rated silver under the Green Building Index for existing building. Okay, there's 2 parts of the building itself. The one on the left is where the hangars are, and on the right is where the administrative building is. The drop-off area, the main building itself, And this, of course, from the front, showing the end drop-off area to the administrative buildings. And this is where the hangars are. And of course, basically, as you know, industrial buildings normally designed by engineers. But on this note, it's designed by architects, and of course we have to conform to the requirements which we have followed the European aviation standards. Okay, this is another project that we were lucky to do, okay, again in Putrajaya itself, which is the administrative capital of Malaysia. And this is the last project of the migrations of all the ministries from Kuala Lumpur to Putrajaya. It took us from inception until completion for a long, long time, I think more than 10 years. This is in view of the government deciding on the cost itself. And not only that, for this massive project, it involves 3 architects. And of course, it's just one contractor. Okay. What we learned from this project is that architects sometimes you do collaboration, especially for bigger projects. Okay, and not only that, this is one project that if you look under the building information technology, okay, this is a project that went from stage 1 to the final stage. And it actually won end of last year, okay, again MCCIDB awards for the large category. And out of the, if I'm not mistaken, there are 10 buildings, 3 architects, and we were involved in 4 buildings, inclusive of the, what they call the pedestrian bridge. Again, if you look into detail, okay, there's a lot of what they call shading devices, and of course, the story behind it is that it tried to eliminate the songket, which is actually a traditional woven material. So that's what depicted on the exterior. And what's good about this particular one is at different angles, you see a different shape of the building itself. And it was actually very challenging, especially for the when we were casting the what they call shading device, because they are not standard sizes. Okay, what we did was we actually do besides the computer modeling, we actually do a proper model to ensure that each element is actually very precise. And we've learned a lot on this project. In fact, if I would consider in my almost 40 years of being a practicing architect, this is one project that I was hands-on, and I did a lot of learning, not only from the architectural aspect, of course for the architectural aspects, for the curtain walling, you have to do the what they call testing, for the interiors, for the stone. You know, you visited where the factory is, which the source of the material is, which is factory in China, where we lay the stones on the floor, get it approved first before it's actually shipped to Malaysia. And not only that, even in Malaysia we have another testing to ensure that it's as per what has been agreed earlier and subsequently installed on site. And of course, this one, as I said, there are 10 buildings and different buildings. And although we have 3 architects, but if you look at the overall, what you call outlook of the building, the conformity on the buildings is all shown and very precise over here. Okay, that's the interior. As you look where the stones are, maybe I think stone usage in Pakistan is more common than in Malaysia itself. We can't actually get it from locally, and in this case we went to China to get it. Some of the blocks that we've done, this particular one. The corridor, the thing for the building that I've shown earlier. And to show in December when I received the awards for the what they call best major building projects. And of course, prior to that, as I said, 10 years, okay, I did that model for the Venice Biennale, and it was exhibited in Venice itself. And that particular one was actually in the magazine of the Firefly Airlines in Malaysia. And in the last few years, okay, we did a lot of mass housing, okay, which is very, very common in Malaysia. And of course, as you know, if you look at the typology and also designs of mass housing, it's actually very straightforward. Okay, whether the opening is 20, 24, 30, that sort of thing. You can't do much with regards to the interior. Okay, but of course, looking into the interior, and we were lucky, our clients, Saindagi Properties, were actually what they call a developer that is in the forefront for energy efficient, sustainability and whatnot. So the material usage for the building itself has conformed to a lot of very, very strict procurement system, whereby the paint usage, the brickwork that we are looking at, and the calculations of the energy, the lighting and whatnot to the buildings has to be very precise. In some of the interior work that we've done, okay, some other projects. It's very common in Malaysia. Some people say that it looks like barracks or whatsoever, but the outlook and the challenges for our architects, how you actually do the facade, okay, to ensure that it looks the barrack like is not there. A few others that we did. And again, the developer had decided us to give the consultant top performance, which we got it last year, unexpected. Okay, sometimes it goes, okay, one thing about architects, it's just not about design. Okay, as you know, there are various phases that we need to do, from design, contract documentation, contract administration and whatnot. And I presume this is what is based from A to Z. Okay, sometimes you can win an award for design, but you mess up on the what we call administration side and so on. So in view of architects, because since most of you all are students, okay, if you are really going to the real world outside, okay, it's just not about design alone. Okay, there's more to that. And of course, you need to know a lot on the technical aspect, which is very, very important. Because if you can resolve the technical aspect during design stage, it makes things easier during the construction stage. The problem with construction stage, like most of you all who are actually practicing architects, is actually dealing with contractors. So whether you get a good contractor or not, okay, you are lucky if you get one. Okay, and sometimes this is what I inform my staff, not only that, even with students that I give talks to. You might get the best contractors in the world, but he can still mess up that particular job that is with you. So it all depends on the team that you work with, from your side, from the staff consultant side, and everyone else. And unfortunately, I'm here. I've got actually one mass housing project, and the one who messed up was actually my M&E consultant. You know, when you are at the tail end, okay, you need to deal with the authorities and whatnot, and sometimes when the authorities come to the site, then you find out this was not done properly, that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, it's about being professional in what you do. Architects are professional, all the other disciplines are professional. As long as you do your work properly, you should not be worried about it. I always tell my contractors, my subconsultants, I like to argue with you guys. I like to argue at the beginning so that we can shake hands and be happy when the project is actually passed to the client as well. These are a few other projects, either they are under construction at the moment, okay. This is one project that we are doing now. It's the most, I think, 80% on site. Okay, it's actually okay, good for. As I drove over here and a few times, I've been to Pakistan, whether Lahore or Islamabad. Okay, I noted there's a lot of buildings that is for function for weddings and sort of thing. So this is one of them that we are doing at the moment. Okay, that bag is what they call, it can be utilized as a banquet hall or even other functions. And this is a project that we won for competitions for a sales gallery. Very simple, okay. But again, if you look into the outlook, okay, the long spans of the overhangs and whatnot, which is very common in the Southeast Asian countries, where we have intense sunlight and also the rain. Usage of building materials is very important. Okay, as I said, client will always want your building to be at least maintained, this sort of thing. And we were not only involved with the building itself, we were also involved with the landscape. This, when Diana showed the micro library, the sort of thing, I have one, but I'm not sure whether it's going to be constructed or not, because in Malaysia, timber is very, very expensive. Okay, but this is one that we try to do for philanthropists in the state up north in Peninsular Malaysia, at the paddy fields, the sort of thing. And we want to go back to what it was before, using timber, which is not common these days. And as I said, one of the key reasons is very, very expensive. And construction-wise, we try actually to use very little nails and whatnot, so that it conforms to what was before, the tongue and groove and all that. Hopefully, you see the light of the day. But as you know, when a project is actually based on donation, in this case, philanthropist who is willing to do this, okay, sometimes there's always hiccups. Sometimes it takes a longer time, but at the end of the day, what I told my team who were involved in this job is, be patient, okay? If it's there, God's willing, it's there. If it's not, okay, hopefully we can do other projects. Another project that we do is the same client as the library itself. He wanted to do a bungalow, okay, in Cyberjaya, near the lake, that sort of thing. And although in terms of design, we actually include the typical Malay kampung houses, but in a modern context. And of course, it's a bit difficult because of the sheer size of the building itself. As you know, well, I'm not really sure whether you're fully aware of that. The typical kampung house, okay, is not that grand, that sort of thing, but in terms of size, it's huge for this particular one. So you try to do that in terms of, if you noted, although the roof curves and sort of thing that's for easy runoff for the rain itself, very wide overhangs everywhere, whether on the sides or on the fronts, the building is actually set back. Okay, that will reduce the light coming into the building itself, and at the same time give the building a lot of shading. And hopefully, and again, I try to actually do the concept that we do for the office, low office building, which is roof over the roof. Okay, so the upper area, although there's a roof, but you utilize it for social activities. Thank you very much. Shukriya.
We would now move on to our other segment titled Conversations, and I would like to invite Tazeen Hussain, who's the chair for design, to invite the panelists.
So our talk has been titled Disruptors, Activists and Impact by Design by our curator, Maria Aslam today. I would give a little bit of an introduction to the way we conceive of the panel today and the conversation. So in a world that is constantly evolving, the intersection of activism and design has become a very powerful and relevant tool. Design is no longer just about aesthetics. It's a tool for change, a vehicle for disruption, and a platform for amplifying the voices of those who seek to make a meaningful change in society. Today, we are fortunate to be joined by a group of individuals who are posing a challenge to the status quo, and through their work, by showing us that art and design can and should be pushing boundaries, driving innovation, and helping to reshape the world around us. So, to take this conversation forward, I would like to invite my panelists now. Professor Salima Hashmi, the founding dean of SWAG and the former principal of NCA, currently serving as the director of UNESCO, Madanjit Singh Institute for South Asian Arts. She has authored Unveiling the Visible and several other books, and is also the co-founder of the Rotas Gallery. And right after her, I would like to invite Durre, an assistant professor at SWAG BNU. She has a background in industrial design, design research, and specializes in social design. Her research navigates the intricate dynamics of power, politics, and neo-colonial practices in design. Durre is also a member of the International Social Design Network and an AN advisor at the Bern University of Art and Design in Switzerland. Imran Qureshi has developed a contemporary practice rooted in the tradition of the 16th century Mughal miniature art and site-specific installations. His work constitutes a unique synthesis of traditional motifs and techniques with current issues and the formal language of contemporary abstract painting, reminiscent of action painting. And Mr. Asad Hai. Asad Hai is a curator in HBL. He is also a visual artist interested in exploring Pakistan's political upheavals and its tumultuous history. So, taking some of these things forward, I would like to begin my panel discussion by posing the question, what do we understand by disruption through design? And I think, breaking tradition, I'm going to ask Durre to give me the answer to that. With all due respect to the seniors present on the panel. Okay?
I feel really good about my age right now. Thank you. Thank you so much, Samiko. I think I definitely see disruption as it is generally seen as has a more negative connotation, but when it comes to design, be it design education or practice, I do believe that it is a playground for us. Calling design a disruption brings us together and resolves a lot of issues. When it comes to tool, I think something we really need to think about is that while we design, at the very same time, simultaneously we are being designed by nature, by other designers. So it's a two-way street. Yeah, and then the simultaneity of it has the power to change the social order. Be it a space, be it an object, everything has the power to change social orders, to change behaviors. So it's very natural for design to change, to bring change, or bring disruption. Yeah.
Now, आपने बात की कि हम shape होते हैं उन चीज़ों से जो हम design करते हैं, and design also shapes us. So it's a two-way street.
I'll also add one more sentence,
yes,
that we are an extension of the extensions that we built, because of the architecture was being talked about, and we're definitely extensions of the
extensions. And so that brings me to your role as a core member of the AIDA program. And I would like you to talk a little bit about the curriculum and its relation to the concept of disruption.
Yeah. So IDA, which is BA Honors IDA, Interdisciplinary Expanded Design and Art, is a program that in itself inherently holds space for disruption. It was envisioned as something to bring disruption within the educational system that we were following traditionally within art and design specifically. It talks about bringing disciplines together. It talks about cross-pollination of knowledge areas. That's how the curriculum has been set, and we have students who combine biology and scientific knowledge with art and design. We have students who are interested in data and how that comes together with some sort of social norm. We have students who are working with NGOs and as designers and artists bringing some sort of change within this country in the local context. So the curriculum is very specifically designed as a transformative form with a lot of focus on systemic change and not just building of spaces and objects, which is a very rudimentary form of design, I believe. Design is much more expanded than looking at object, space, and system. But together with it, the systemic form, bringing all of that together.
So we talk about the cross-pollination of ideas through design, right? And that brings me to a question to Mrs. Professor Seema Hashmi. So as someone committed to activism and being the principal of NCA and then the founding member of SWAG, which actually positions itself in quite an opposition to the way things were at the NCA, do you think you've been able to disrupt art and design education and hence practice?
I think that being disruptive begins where it should begin. Since I'm very ancient, I have the advantage sometimes of being highly forgetful, but also the awkward situation of remembering things. You talked about language earlier. I grew up in a country called Pakistan, in which the majority of people spoke Bengali. Urdu was a minority language. In 1948, when Urdu was declared the national language, a language of the minority of people of Pakistan, the majority of people felt offended. They were not represented there in the country of Pakistan. And in 1952, this movement erupted. It was called language riots in our newspapers in West Pakistan. It was called the language movement in East Pakistan, which housed the majority of our citizens. So the assumptions that we have about, I'm just using one aspect of, say, language, is something that you should think about very, very carefully. The nation state is, for many of our citizens, a coercive state. And therefore, the lens through which I view innovations usually is the human rights lens, very often the gender lens. And so when we talk about innovative design, I think very often, at least in our context, we forget to ask the answer, who is it for? And what will it do? I say that because at this moment in history, we are looking at any number of initiatives which are very anti-people, which are going to destroy the livelihoods of people in our agricultural sector, who are already destroying livelihoods of people in the mining sector, in metropolitan areas, in places like Lahore, for example. The absolutely vicious authority that was set up to deny people who had been providing agricultural products for the city of Lahore, making it into a haven for new housing societies and new buildings. This is something that I feel that architects, designers, and sometimes artists who become complicit and they forget what is actually their role in state. I purposely think I'm using the word state because the nation state has ways of ensuring that its people comply with it. I mean, it can be anything from the constitution to an army to judiciary, etc., etc. But at what point do they actually serve the
Professor
people?
Hashmi, ये microphone sound को कौन कर रहा है यहाँ पर? Can you just check on the sound? Thank you.
I pressed it, but it doesn't remain.
Huh? That's better.
Okay, so I think I've been fairly vociferous already. But you get my point, that as designers or architects, or in fact artists, we forget to ask this question. Who is it for? Who is it going to deny their rights? And is it in greater good? And who are the people who form the greater good?
Right. So the idea of exclusion, right? Exclusion from the main places, exclusion from where the voices can be heard. And I think what you spoke about is the intent of any creative practitioner, be it an architect, designer, or an artist, to ask this question regarding our practice. Which brings me to your other endeavor, the Rotas Gallery, and also a little bit, after you have spoken about the Rotas Gallery and the change it sort of bring, a little bit about your role in UMESA.
The Rotas Gallery was really an extension of the teaching studio. We were voices in the wilderness. This was Ziaul Haq's time. No work was displayed if it didn't comply with the orders of the hierarchy, which were basically, okay, let's discourage figurative art. Let's talk about how wonderful things are, when in fact they weren't. So it started as an initiative by architects, by the architectural firm in Islamabad, in Bindi actually at that time, in Faizabad, which was Khalil Basha Architects, and they invited me to be the third party. And we thrashed out what should be our vision, which was to be disruptive, to show works that were not acceptable. And also because we were, how do I put it, fairly bloody-minded, we decided we would not show any calligraphy, because that was being thrust down our throat by the government, who said, you know, what's wrong with calligraphy? It's Islamic, it is non-figurative, it's very, very modern. But of course, we were wanting to be disruptive. We also decided not to show any landscapes, with apologies to my artist friends who were landscapers, because it had a tendency to become calm, and we were not calm. So therefore, we were showing works that were just beginning to appear, new practices, which was what we wanted to encourage, people who had not received the status of being well-known and well-bought. So consequently, many artists who went on to have very wonderful careers, both in Pakistan and abroad, started out at Rotas. And this was in Pindi, Faizabad actually, and then moved to Islamabad. Later, after I retired from NCA, I decided to build a studio, except my friends who were really my enemies told me that was extremely selfish and I should have a gallery instead. So Rotas too started out, which did the same job, which was basically encouraging unusual practices, new practices, people who were wanting to experiment and share with the public. In that sense, it was encouraging people from different parts of Pakistan, bringing them together, which is something that NCA did, and now BNU does, and just see how people responded. And yeah, and I think that one has continued until COVID to do the same sort of thing.
Thank you. You did not speak about UMESA. UMESA.
Okay. Yeah, that's my baby.
Yes.
And I'm very, very proud of it. This happened by a chance meeting with a gentleman in Paris by the name of UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador, Madanjit Singh, who happened to know my father, and he had this dream of peace in South Asia, an elusive one, as we know. And he had just come into a little bit of money, and he said, your university is just starting, and I would like to start by giving you a scholarship program which would bring 2 artists from all of the 8 SAARC countries, 1 girl, 1 boy, and to study art, because he was an artist and a photographer himself. So that's how it began. So for the last 21 years now, we have hosted at BNU artists, young artists and designers who have come from Afghanistan right up to Maldives. It has been a great saga of persuading warring governments to allow their students to come to us with our long problems of getting them visas. But I have, managed occasionally to circumvent. So in these last 21 years, we have graduated young artists and designers from all over South Asia. It was a wonderful, joyful moment. And just 3 days ago, Aziz Hazara won the Sharjah Biennale Award. Just one of the many awards that our graduates have won all over the world. And they have, I think also one of the joys has been to see Afghan artists who managed to flee when the Taliban came because they were helped by the network that we have built up over these years. We have our former graduates living in places, as far apart as Berlin and Melbourne. Kashmiri students from Indian Held Kashmir, who we have graduated, who are among, I think, some of the finest graduates that we've ever taught. So it has been a learning experience for all of us, where it's given BNU the diversity and also the knowledge that each student brings to us from their cultures, and really creates amazing mixtures. And I think they take back something with them, which is equally valuable, and which tempers their practices with a great deal of wisdom. Let's put it that way.
And lending to the aspect of migration reform, perhaps.
Absolutely.
Thank you. इमरान, हमने बात की अभी कि लैंडस्केप्स एंड कैलीग्राफी तो रोजास में बिल्कुल नहीं दिखाए जाते थे. And yet, I'm speaking to somebody who is known as the pioneer of neo-miniature, a traditional practice. And you explore the contradictions and tensions between tradition and modernity through your work. Do you see your work and practice as activism?
Hello. I think when my art practice was developing or evolving, at that time it was very much like a personal dialogue, and slowly I realized after years that my work is how it comes under this notion of activism, or when people started saying it. But when I was doing it, it was something which was just coming out of me.
Okay.
And that was, I think actually, I feel that it was a very good thing as an artist for me, because when you're conscious that you have to talk about issues in your art, then I find it slightly superficial kind of thing. When it's coming naturally in your art practice, it's something which really you want to talk about it. So that way I find it very interesting.
Also the aspect of taking miniature, which was a very local practice, local to South Asian region perhaps is what I should say, and then propelling it to the world stage, looking at scale and then looking at it going beyond the geographical boundaries. What do you have to say about that? I mean, you've recently come back from an installation in Jeddah, and
I think the scale is very much important part of my art practice, because starting off with a very small tiny miniature and taking it towards this Jadda installation and totally shift of medium as well. So I'm teaching at NCA for past 30 years almost, and I am also coordinating students' societies over there, extracurricular societies, which involve drama, music, mime, skits, puppetry. And I think these are very much like, at the moment I feel like that for me, the boundaries between design, art, architecture, they are quite
Blurred.
merging.
Yeah.
And I see everything with same eye lens. And I see a building like I look at a painting in the same way. So when I was working with a student from different disciplines like architecture, design, fine art, and we were organizing different events, designing those events, and there are different kind of mediums which are coming to decorate the college building. And a lot of people think that I am wasting my time in it and I should focus on my practice. And now I realize that the way I am looking at different things on streets like LED light lamps or plastic flowers and these charpais and how they are coming back to my practice. It's
Like
because of my,
design.
it's because of my experience with the students' body, how I was designing their events. And this is something recent which I explored about my practice, that how this thing has came to my own practice as well. And I'm very comfortable with the idea of shifting to scale from miniature to a large scale installation or painting. Because when I work, I think the spaces, whether it's miniature painting or it's a huge installation, they have equal challenges for me, and they want equal kind of intention or time or focus from myself. It's not like the painting is small, so you can do it quickly, and something is really big, so you have different kind of challenge. I find totally, I enjoy everything equally.
Thank you. Asad Haisa, let's talk about some of the initiatives that HPL has invested in recently, and not recently actually, or the role that HPL is playing in those initiatives and in facilitating the practice of art and design as we know it.
Yes, I'm really excited to share that at HPL, it's the first cooperative institution that has taken a role to support art and cultural activities in our country. This whole story started 5-6 years ago when HPL acquired a building which already hosted some art pieces in it. And it became a bit of challenge for them to how to maintain these artworks and how to sustain it. Because I personally feel, because my background being a creator is with Lotus as well, 14-15 years, acquiring art is not a problem, but making any sense or maintaining is more important and difficult aspect. So my role initially with HPL was as a consultant, and I helped them to maintain these art pieces. But eventually, this whole story moved on to make an art committee within the institution. And so what we did, that we thought that okay, it's a high time that corporate sector should get into the supporting the cultural activities. Chairman HPL, Mr. Alana, was very clear about this idea that okay, we will acquire, but we will make it accessible. We will buy for the building of HPL, but it should not be just limited to our eyes only. So what we did, that we started moving out and collaborating with other partners and institutions, supporting individuals who are actually making difference in making, creating the awareness about art and art activities. So I think in this way, the HPL has taken an initiative to bring their art collection every year to Karachi Literature Festival. And we bring our art pieces and we put them out for the public to see, where the masses can come and see, and where one can generate a dialogue. And that is another kind of creating the idea of putting the activism there.
Yes.
That way you really trying to blur the boundaries of private collectors and institutions, where art is just not limited for the as an elitist activity. It really becomes a product for the general people to understand, where school children can come and have an access to it.
So one of the works that we were there at the launch yesterday, which was also supported by HPL, and we were looking at Vikas Khan's work. And एक सवाल आपसे दिखाना है कि 30 साल पढ़ाना and looking back at those 30 years of teaching, would you like to talk a little bit about your students and where they have reached and how they are contributing? So we were talking about impact over here, and we're talking about how we measure impact, right? So impact in terms of numbers, and we've been speaking today about the retrospective, the long journey, when you look back 30 years. So impact is something which is, should it only be viewed through the lens of immediate results or immediate change? But then when we look at, in terms of impact, how, when we look back, how does that unfold?
Okay, in terms of students, there are many who are doing really good, like Saira Wasim or Khadim Ali, Mohammad Zishan, Mary Zubairi, there are many. So, but for me, teaching to a student, the thing which gives me really satisfaction when a weaker student becomes like there. It's not like that some students really good from their first year and we make them, and we should be proud of them by the end of the year by seeing them, because they were always giving a quality work. But there are some students who are really weak, and so I would like to work with them more and bringing them to that level. And when they reach to certain level, I think that is something that gives really great satisfaction.
Thank you. Another notion that we speak about is the notion of disruption through design, which is based on a break with history and received knowledge or accepted knowledge as we know it. After looking at these presentations today, how do we feel about that, the notion of disruption? And that notion of disruption, when we speak about the need for having that disruption as part of the design and art practice, is there a need to develop a definition or a way to look at disruption in our context which is different from that which is accepted form of disruption, which is to break with tradition and break with history? Any thoughts? And this is my last question to the panel. And all of you can weigh in on that.
Well, I think you'll have to listen to an anecdote, because at my age people become storytellers. 1971, and the country had just disintegrated, become two parts. There was a lot of depression. And I remember at NCA, a bunch of us got together, led by Zahoor, Clark, and Ahmed Khan, who had was in the design department. And we said, we have to do something for the city of Lahore. And those were days before digital and internet and all the rest of it. And we said, what can we do that would lift the people? And so we said, I think Ahmed said, look at the billboards, let's change the billboards. And so we all took off our packages and we went to them and they said, we said, can you give us your big rolls of paper, that they cut up? And they agreed, and they gave us a huge roll, and we brought it back, and the studios were emptied out, and these large sheets of paper were laid out, and the students and the teachers said, okay, so we need to have images, make images, before we go to them. and slogans. And Nastaliq, we decided, was too gentle, type. And so Ahmed Khan invented this very bold, geometric way of writing Urdu, which later became very fashionable. And basically it was to think of things that we could write and make, and the next day and all night and all day we were working. And those billboards which showed, Kohinoor textiles or, Falana Bank, they were covered all over the city. And there were things like, Ye Mulk Awam Ka Hai, just simply that, and it just showed people, and so on and so forth. And there were lines of poetry also. Basically, it was to tell us that there was still hope, that we could come together. And though half our nation had left us, for reasons that are unnecessary to go in now, but there was still half a nation left, and that nation could become a whole. So therefore, it was a critical moment. It was just a city of Lahore. We had no means, no resources to go elsewhere, nor would we have been allowed to. But the fact that designers and artists felt strongly enough to undertake that and gave the city a feeling of hope, and that all was not lost, that we had to reinvent ourselves. So this was just, and it was the designers really who took the lead, and I give credit to people like Ahmed Khan, who just brought his students together and did that. So yes, the innovation that can come out of a massive destruction, in this case, and disruption, which in this case was the breaking apart of a country, turned to a different way of using the talents.
Thank you. Dilip?
I would just mention a drive that I have with pedagogy, and specifically because I come from an industrial design background. We definitely need to, before defining what disruption means, to define what design means. It's a very basic question that we have not been able to answer. It's been many years. We're still teaching the same things. Another gripe that I have is that recently, in the past 7 to 10 years, all the universities of art and design have started introducing courses such as social design, politics, activism. I'm part of it. I'm part of the problem. I teach these courses. Why? Why are these courses being taught as electives? Why is this not inherently part of the curriculums? Why are we separating it and creating some sort of binaries in our minds and the minds of our students? It has to happen at a very grassroots level. Yeah.
So the idea of a practice which is socially and politically engaged, rather than thinking that the studio is the space where you produce for capital, and these are the concerns that are peripheral. Thank you. Imran, आप बात करते हैं about knowing, having a command over your tradition, and only then creating disruption or being able to create disruption.
I don't know, I would like to continue with what she left. She was talking about how they took billboard as something to express their idea or feeling. So at the time of COVID, Lahore Binale Foundation, they introduced a project and they took many billboards, and HBL was supporting that project as well. And they invited artists to make something for the billboard. So most of the artists had their artwork on the billboard, and I was thinking the design side of it very much. I was thinking it was a kind of space for me, that billboard. And if I'm using a billboard, there should be a purpose of an artist using a billboard. So I decided to model for that billboard like the model used to do. And I took a picture of myself wearing a mask covered with gold leaf, which is referring to my miniature painted background. And also the gold leaf was like the importance of mask. In that way we realized how much it was like. We were ordering masks online and they were charging a lot, and it was more like a shield for you to protect you from some disease. It was a kind of very social message for the people to fight with COVID and these things. So I use it in that way.
Thank you so much.
I would like to continue from Doris' point that we really need to understand that why we're teaching design or what is design. And I must say that Shazad, even in his presentation, spoke that we didn't work on our curriculums. Our curriculums are very, very crucial right now. So I have a...
Soch is the term used.
Yeah. I have a experience of teaching middle school for 20 years, art and design. And I must say that it is the most important segment of our curriculum that we really need to look in. So what we teach in undergrad, we have to build it from the scratch, from the classroom level. So if we really need to make a change, we have to rethink ourselves as well.
Zabardast. And I would just like to end this. At least through this panel, we've been able to listen to so much of history and so many initiatives that are totally lacking from our curriculum and hence from our pedagogy as well. And the pride that Shazad speaks about, though it's a contentious thing, however, the pride that he speaks about and the identity that he speaks about, and all of that is that missing link. So the need to archive and to document our own, and perhaps come up with a notion of disruption which is not antagonistic with history, but perhaps a blend of history but moving towards innovation. And I think I would like to end with that. Thank you. Are we taking questions, Maria?
Yes, sure, I think we should.
We should? Okay, are there any questions regarding the panel? And thank you so much for sharing yours. Yes?
The question of language was highlighted by Mrs. Hashmi also and the gentleman there. सकाफत जुबान से शुरू होती है. This is what the sentence. Urdu was the language of minority, as Mrs. Hashmi said. But look at pre-partition India. In Hyderabad, Deccan, medical schools were teaching in Urdu. Hyderabad, Deccan. In the Western Bengal, films were made in Urdu. Bombay is obviously famous for producing Urdu films pre-partition. So it was not a language of minority. Urdu was understood all over. In Punjab, for example, in the 20th century, all the big names are all Punjabis who have written in Urdu. Sahir Ludhianvi, Sahir, Manto, Krishan Chandra, Ravindra Singh Bedi, Nasir Kazmi, and I can go on. They were not Urdu speaking. Okay. Faisal, okay? So Urdu was, as we know, is the language of Lashkar. That's how it is called language of Lashkar. That's how it developed. And I was surprised when I went to Sri Lanka to study way back that there was a Nepali boy, Nepali architect, and I never knew that he can also speak Urdu or Hindi, which is very close. So we were able to converse. But he was, some certain words like panna, which is page, which was that was different from Urdu. But we were able to converse. I think so. And also, if you go back historically, what was the court language of Mughal time? Persian. What was the court language of Maharaja Ranjit Singh's time? Persian. Not Punjabi. Right? So, you always had this, one language which is like an official language and the local language. And in the 18th century, if you liked all the Bulleh Shahs and, they were writing excellent poetry in the local language. So what do you say to this, man?
I would also like to ask.
I would say that there are examples of countries that have more than one language. And the reality in 1947 was that Muslim League started in Dhaka. It was founded in Dhaka, and therefore to deny the majority of our citizens the right to their national language was a mistake. It was a grave political mistake. Many countries have more than one national language. And thoughtfulness is essential when you're talking about language, as you said. And right now, language is a very major issue in Pakistan, as you know. It is an absolute, tinderbox when you go to it, because it is tied up with denial of people's rights. And that is where it becomes problematic. So I think that dealing with it through a more human rights angle, that people should have the right to their basic language. Now, as educationists, it is irrefutable that all children should be taught in their mother language up to class 5. And we know that the majority of the children in Pakistan are not taught in their mother language. This is a huge issue, and we're dealing with the fallout.
Yeah, so the idea of inclusivity, making that space for the others, not necessarily saying that there's no challenge to the fact that Urdu is understood or that is the main language, but making space for the others as well. So the concept of reparative futures, the concept of the voices from the margins, and an inclusive way to look at something is perhaps what we're talking about over here. Thank you so much for the response, Professor Hasmi. Thank you so much for the question. Anybody else? Okay, so we're running late now. Thank you so much. Thank you, panelists, for sharing those wonderful insights.
I can assure you that I truly believe in it, and every word of it I will agree to. I would like to thank the ADA Awards for inviting me to speak tonight. Initiatives such as this one are vital to achieving excellence, promoting the rise of civil society, and finding lessons that lift the human spirit. I am honored to be given this opportunity. It is a privilege to address this gathering today and to reflect on the promise of architecture. Architecture serves as a physical manifestation of human values, bridging thought and action through spatial language. It interprets societal aspirations, embedding ideals like dignity, equity, and beauty into the built environment. The promise of architecture is both a hope and a responsibility. It is the commitment that architecture can shape environments, enhance human experiences, and respond meaningfully to cultural, social, and environmental challenges. Architecture is not merely about constructing buildings, it's about crafting spaces where humanity can flourish. As His Highness the Aga Khan had noted, architecture holds the profound ability to create harmony between the past and the future, between different cultures, and between humanity and the natural world. Tonight, I'll discuss only 3 dimensions of this. First, the significance of architectural awards. Why architectural awards are essential in developing countries. Architectural awards are not just about recognizing beauty or innovation, they are instruments of education and transformation. Architecture is an ethical act, one that serves society by enhancing human dignity and strengthening community. Awards, particularly in developing countries, play a crucial role in advancing this vision. In these contexts, architectural awards are a beacon of hope and possibility. They celebrate ingenuity in overcoming constraints, whether financial, technical, or social. They shine a light on projects that honor cultural identity while embracing modernity, projects that emphasize the importance of local context. Architectural awards inspire others to see that excellence is achievable even in challenging circumstances. Furthermore, awards such as the ADA Awards encourage accountability and dialogue. They provoke important questions. Are we building spaces that are inclusive? Are we respecting the environmental and cultural heritage of the communities we serve? In answering these questions, we build not just better structures, but stronger societies. Secondly, why architectural excellence matters. As His Highness the Aga Khan had remarked, architecture is not simply about building, it's about improving quality of life. This sentiment captures the essence of why architectural excellence matters. Architecture has the power to bridge divides, be they cultural, economic, or generational. A well-designed building is not just a structure, it's a statement of shared values and aspirations. Excellence in architecture also matters because it addresses our most pressing global challenges. Climate change, urbanization, and inequality demands innovative solutions. We have to champion architecture that is sustainable, both environmentally and socially. This means using resources wisely, designing for the long term, and creating spaces that uplift all members of society. But excellence is also about beauty, beauty that nurtures the human spirit. Beauty is not a luxury, but a necessity, one that enriches our lives and connects us to something greater than ourselves. It is through beauty that architecture transcends functionality and becomes art, a shared language that speaks to our common humanity. The role of civil society in improving built environments. Collaboration between multiple stakeholders, governments, architects, and civil society in creating built environments that reflect shared values is an important aspect of architecture. Civil society plays a crucial role in this process, serving as both a guide and a catalyst for meaningful change. Civil society can articulate the needs and aspirations of communities, ensuring that architecture serves the many, not the few. This is particularly vital in contexts where marginalized voices are often excluded from decision-making processes. By amplifying these voices, civil society ensures that our built environments are inclusive, equitable, and just. Moreover, civil society can foster a sense of stewardship of public spaces. The preservation of cultural heritage is essential for a sense of identity and continuity. Whether it is advocating for the restoration of a historic market or supporting the development of community spaces, civil society empowers people to take ownership of their surroundings. Finally, civil society can drive the demand for sustainability by promoting awareness of green building practices and encouraging local participation. Civil society can align architectural efforts with the broader goal of environmental stewardship, a principle that is central to human progress. And lastly, building a future rooted in harmony. I would like to return to the words of His Highness the Aga Khan. Architecture can be a powerful force for good, a source of social cohesion and cultural identity, a means of expressing beauty and spirituality, and an inspiration for human progress. In conclusion, I return to where I started, the promise of architecture. The promise of architecture is in its transformative power, not only to construct buildings, but to build bridges between people, to honor the diversity of cultures, and to create spaces that inspire and uplift. Architectural awards, a commitment to excellence, and the active participation of civil society are all vital to achieving this vision. Together, we have the responsibility and the opportunity to shape a built environment that reflects our highest ideals, that strive to create spaces that embody harmony, that embody harmony between tradition and modernity, between humanity and nature, and among diverse communities. In doing so, we will not only enhance the physical world, but elevate the human spirit. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tausif Khwaja. We will now move to our MA ADS degree show, which is on the second floor, room 205. Our ushers will guide you. We will take a tour of the degree show and then we will proceed to lunch. After which we will gather here again at 2 o'clock and our remaining presentations will continue from there on. Thank you so much. Dr. Frederick, you're live now, and we have our audience watching you.
Awesome.
So you can start.
Okay, can I share my screen here?
Yes.
Just a minute.
Lights.
It's coming through. Here you go. Do you see it?
Yes. Yes.
All
Yes,
right. Thank you, Maria, for this invitation and to join this great moment, the ADA Awards. Yeah, it's unfortunate I cannot be there in person, but I will try to make my way through participating at distance by sharing a few of my thoughts and experiences with this concept of decolonizing design. And I hope you get a great discussion out of that. So I was searching for relationships between Brazil and Pakistan. I found out there are a good Brazilian soccer fan base in this village called Biari, Karachi. And yeah, it's nice to know that you are aware of our great soccer qualities. And there's definitely some other things that I could learn from Pakistan next time. But I know another thing about Pakistan that is also shared with Brazil, which is the history of colonialism. In Brazil, we were colonized by the Portuguese, where you were colonized by the British. They have very different colonization styles, and the consequences are so different to our nation, to our people, to the future generations, because we are still having to handle that so-called colonial legacy. It put an imprint in our people that does not go away so easily. And this is like a diagrammatic view of how colonialism works. And I'm going to get to the role of design in colonialism in a few seconds. But in overall, we have this metropolis sending to the colony government, or imposing government, sending manufactured goods, and also promoting ideas of what is beautiful and what is good, and ultimately defining the way how the colony should think about everything. Whereas the colony gives back submission to the metropolis, and in trade, in economic terms, provides raw materials for those manufactured goods to come back and return for much expensive price. But also the colony provides the idea of ugliness, or what the metropolis does not want to be. So there's definitely a low self-esteem built into the system, where the colony always think that they will never be able to be like the metropolis, and that's the reason why colonialism should stay in place. And in terms of design, this relationship brings about divide between thinking done elsewhere in metropolises and making done at the colony. These are the division of labor that happens internationally. Of course, both Pakistan and Brazil aren't and no longer colonies in a formal sense, but there is still this unequal relationship between our nations and the former metropolises. Nowadays, we call them the relationship between the developed nations and the underdeveloped or developing nations. But still, although there's an imposition of government, manufactured goods are trading for raw materials pretty much in many areas of our economies. And the basic divide between thinking and making is still very much in place. We are not thought to be thinking nations, we are thought to be making nations, and that's how we contribute to the global economy. And this is the result of how it impacts design. This is a picture of Portuguese colonial furniture system for Brazilian homes. And it was manufactured in Brazil, was designed by Brazilian master countess, but they still follow the same colonial style just because it has been ingrained to the colonial culture. So Brazilians, they think that this is good, this is nice. Although for someone like me who is thinking about decolonizing and getting beyond these styles, this looks pretty much ugly. So this is what happens in Brazil now, and I suppose it's also happening in Pakistan. It's a decolonizing process. And so we cannot cut the ties directly from the developed nations, and we should not do that, because in the globalized economy that is like suicide. But what we are doing is increasingly developing for ourselves in a different way than the developed nations would like us to do. And that's what I call autonomous development. And in this new relationship, when there's decolonizing process going on, the developed countries, they may still invest money. They should transfer technology. They maybe expose them or share their styles. But then we react to this incoming information or materials in a different way. So we generate profit, we appropriate technology, and we design back some things that are different than we receive. So we design for ourselves, but we also design for the developed, so we can export design in the decolonizing process. Here's two examples. First, Suru, the colonial modular furniture system created by the two of my brightest students, Conrado Dembinski and João Araújo. They created this furniture system you see on the right side, which is a contrast with the left side, the traditional Portuguese colonial furniture that is already still being built in our universities. One of the interesting properties of this new system is that it is manufactured locally, and you can basically cut these pieces in any kind of maker shop, and you can recombine the modules to create new furniture as you go, as you need, tending to the demands that are growing in each situation of use. And they also devised a distributed production system that I'm not going to describe now, but it's a very interesting example of how you can break the barriers between the one way of thinking, a traditional way of based on master and cabinetries, and now thinking about this digitally interconnected distributed systems of production. So another side of the decolonizing process happens also in developed nations. It's very important that developed nations do not stop the process of underdeveloped becoming developed, the autonomous development I was describing. Therefore, it's also needed to be present at the developed nations to develop critical consciousness, to understand the past history of colonialism and its nasty impacts on the former colonies, and how it's important to let the colonies develop themselves in the way that they want. So to respect basically this process and to provide the best support for this process. So you engage and welcome what comes from the former colonies, the undeveloped nations. And that's exactly what I'm doing here at the University of Florida, United States. Now I'm teaching in this Master of Design program called MXD, and our students come from many nations in the world. So we have people from the Middle East, we have people from Asia, we have people from South America, and they come all the way to learn this integrated and critical way of doing design using their hands together. It's called co-design, and in this particular picture you see the work of my current student, Yan Fan. She is a Vietnamese person who comes to the United States to learn co-design, and she's coming across history and the history of her country, the international relationships with the United States and Vietnam, and how does it impact design in the country and design in this country. And all of these students are having a discussion about their own origins and the places that they lived across the world, using very tangible, creative materials that has been designed by these students. So basically, the student Hian Han, she designed this meta object that allows us to have such a rich discussion about the origins of our worlds and how it's being represented in the United States. So they develop more critical consciousness about the kind of message that they need to provide for all the people living in the United States about their home countries. So they do not tell that their home country is underdeveloped, ugly, terrible, that they are flying away from the country. Instead, they develop proudness of coming from abroad and sharing their culture instead of feeling this low self-esteem I spoke about before. So there is this decolonizing process going on in Pakistan, in Brazil, but also decolonizing process going on in the United States, in the United Kingdom, where the former metropolises were based. In a nutshell, then, decolonized design means designing from critical consciousness and for autonomous development. Thank you very much, and some academic materials you can check on my website if you're interested in knowing more about my scholarship. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for sharing this very valuable insight on decoloniality. I think a lot of us are studying decoloniality. We don't have time for question and answers, but I think the notes have been taken, and students or anybody who's interested in knowing more will be in touch with you. We would now like to move to our next speaker, Yahya Jan, who's design director of Noor Studios. So over to you, Yahya.
Okay, started. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I wish I was there in person, inshallah, next time. I just want to talk for maybe 10 minutes at most. I'd like us to think a little bit about two things: technology and teamwork. On technology, there is a Chinese saying, may you live in interesting times. And we do. Our challenge, I believe, is to embrace technology rather than to reject it, but to do so with a purpose. The fact is that great design does not distinguish between architecture and engineering. It does not distinguish between art and science. The greatest inventions of our time and of the future will likely be the result of left brain plus right brain thinking. So the challenge I would like to table today is that architects need to think more like engineers, and engineers need to think more like architects. How do we do that? Well, it all starts with our universities and how we teach the next generation. I believe that the greatest need of our time is the need to teach thinking skills rather than doing skills. Pure thinking. First principle thinking is a way of thinking that distills our challenges to their simplest form, where we resist jumping to answers based on analogy. Instead, we take time to honestly search and question conventional thinking, replacing it with inventive thinking. Convention versus invention, a very exciting yin-yang for us to consider. Today, humanity faces an existential crisis. The continued degradation of our natural habitat, our environment, is a threat to our long-term existence on this fragile planet. And we must think and act with urgency. Long-term objectives pursued aggressively with short-term immediacy. And this requires teamwork, which brings me to the second part of my talk today. Technology, for all its magic, is not enough. What we need in our profession and in our endeavors is to truly embrace teamwork. And those of us who are fortunate to be designers, we live in a cocoon of design. I like to remind ourselves that design is a team sport. Most great achievements are the result of many minds coming together. Yes, architects and engineers should collaborate more closely, and yes, practice and academia too should build bridges. Policymakers need to also embrace practitioners. If we don't do that, if we don't break down these artificial barriers that we have constructed, my concern is that true thinking and innovation will not achieve what it could nature is to meet it, to drive to it, rather than wait for it to happen. And I truly believe that we should embrace the drive by using technology combined with youth to shape our future. Finally, there is an African proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. We have far to go. Let's encourage collaboration. Let's break down artificial barriers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We would now like to invite Professor Venetia Porter, who's a curator, artist, and a writer, and she's going to share her insights with us.
ADA for this wonderful invitation. You don't know how many years it is since I've been longing to come to Lahore, and this is a huge, huge privilege for me to be here. Thank you, Maria, and your wonderful team, and thank you to the university here for hosting us, and also thank you to the British Council for facilitating my visit here. So, I'm going to share with you here a passion I have for books, in particular for artist books. And I'm going to say a little bit about what I think artist books are. There are many things. But this is a work that it'll come eventually. This is a work that I've been doing for some years as a curator at the British Museum, where I was for over 30 years. I had the privilege of being responsible for the collections of Islamic and modern Middle Eastern art, and a huge privilege I had in regard to that was actually building the collection of modern and contemporary Middle Eastern art works on paper. It's a very particular area. And within that, as the years went by, I kept finding books and trying to acquire them for the collection. And when Maria asked me to suggest a topic for conversation, I was thinking by design that books are an appropriate subject to be talking about, I thought. So what is an artist book? So I've got a selection on the screen here, and then I'm going to show you a few that are mostly in the collection of the British Museum, but not exclusively. So in my mind, an artist book is a book, it sounds obvious to say, is a book made by an artist, but it can take any form. It can be a unique work, it can be a multiple, it can be sculptural, and you'll see one example where the book is actually made of stone, so it doesn't have to be made of paper. It can include text, sometimes there's no text, just images. And to me, this is an extraordinary genre. And you often find artists who make books alongside a different kind of practice. So they may be painters, but they also like to make books. And sometimes there's something very particular about a book, is that they're sometimes very personal as well, or they represent a particular love an artist has for poetry, for example. So, am I pointing it at the right thing? Hello? How do I get to the next one? Sorry. So, which is the thing to fix? This one. Okay. So, one of the challenges about books is how to display them, because quite often they are just an open and shut. books. So this is an exhibition I did, which went with the image that you saw first on the screen, which is a book I did called Artists Making Books. And so I did a display of these. And so you have to, every few months you have to turn the pages so people can see them if they come back. In an ideal situation, you really should be digital if you have them in a collection. But that's in an ideal world. I was a curator in Jeddah a few years ago and organized an exhibition called Amakin, meaning places. And in that, I had a whole section on books. And this gives you a sense, I think, of how you can display them and also the sort of multiple types of them, sculptural and otherwise. And this was a particularly remarkable example of an artist, a Saudi artist. And he was inspired by poetry of a Saudi poet called Ghassan al-Khnezi. And so he created an entire wall of what he called books, which are just sort of segments of them, but that he's not trying to recreate the book in any sense. He's trying to kind of give an impression of this. So one of the things that fascinated me in terms of the different types of books that I was encountering was the subject matter. And so there are a lot of artists who make books who are very inspired by poetry, for example. And so, of course, this is the great poet Hafiz. But look at the two very contrasting ways in which Gila Peacock at the top, so she actually took 10 poems of Hafiz and she recreated them. They were to do with birds and animals, and so she recreated the shapes of the birds through calligraphy. And then we have Christine Rionji, and she did a beautiful book, a concertina book, which was inspired. She called it The Poet's Code, but she scribbled the poetry, so she's not using calligraphy at all, and she has a kind of sort of form of automatic writing, in a way, as she describes it. And then here is N'Jam Mahdawi. He's a Tunisian artist, and so this is an edition book, so it's I think maybe 40 or 50. So he took one particular story from the Alf Layla wa Layla, 1001 Nights, and he's become a kind of an icon in the sense of somebody who developed what you might call a calligraphic abstraction, so that the words that he uses, the shapes of the letters are not meant to be read. So that's a very beautiful example of how he integrates text and the design, if you like. Now, one of the earliest artists, Middle Eastern artists, to work in books is somebody called Shafi Aboud. So he comes from Lebanon, and I have to say, George, your film, it was just absolutely incredible. I was brought up in Lebanon, and it was just all my childhood, like, coming in front of me. So Shafi Aboud is one of the great Lebanese artists, but what often people don't know about him is that he's the first Middle Eastern artist to make books, and he was living in Paris from the late 40s into the 50s, and Paris is the home of the artist's book, if you like, of a particular type. It's where we get the name. It's the livre d'artiste, the livre de peintre. And so Aboud, living in Paris, was surrounded by people who were making books. So they were taking French poetry, and there were a couple of publishing houses making beautiful books. The aim of these publishers was to make beautiful books. This is what they loved. And so one of Shafi Aboud's most important books was one that he had actually made printed in Lebanon as part of an initiative which was started by somebody called Yusuf al-Khal, who was a great poet and had a maison d'édition, and they did a series of these printed books because they wanted people to really understand books. And so Shafi Aboud was commissioned to take one of the great texts of Arabic literature, the Maqamat of al-Hariri, There's a very important example of it in the Bibliothèque Nationale made in 1237. And so Shafi Aboud took the stories of the maqamat, and he was one of the first people to really sort of integrate text with image. Now, it's not only the classics of the past that inspire these artists, but contemporary poets. So this is one of the great poets of the Arab world. He's called Adonis Ali Ahmed Said. He's originally from Syria. He then moved to Lebanon. He lives in Paris now. And his poetry has inspired so many artists. And this is an artist, work by an artist, Iraqi artist called Himat, who works with Adonis. And there you see, it was wonderful. Himat sent me these photographs of Adonis writing in his hand something like this. So that's a different work, but they're working on a book together. So then we have something completely different. So this is an artist called Parviz Tanavli, one of the great sculptors of Iran. And he's known as being a sculptor. And he makes these incredible sculptures, which he calls hich, meaning nothing in Persian. And he's made them for decades in all different shapes and sizes, in materials, fiberglass, metal, and so on. Then he suddenly decided to make a book. And what's so beautiful about this book is that the word hich, which means nothing, as you open the pages of the book, the hich, the letters either appear or disappear, depending on the side that you open it from. And for him, this is an inspiration from the great poet Rumi, where there's a line, God created everything from nothingness, and in order to reach the highest level of spiritual connection, we in turn must strive for the purest form of nothingness, which is so beautiful, I think. So there's a very important and interesting tradition that's developed by Iraqi artists, and the prime mover in all of this is an Iraqi artist called Dia Al-Azali, who has lived in the UK for decades now, since the 70s. Now, he has made hundreds and hundreds of books, and had lived in the UK while a lot of his colleagues were artist colleagues were in Iraq and suffering during the time of sanctions and not being able to get materials. And so in dialogue with them, he said to them, why don't you make books? And so they were saying to him, and I've had this from conversations with them, like, books, what do you mean? Like notebooks or what? He said, no, make books as artworks. And so a whole series of these Iraqi artists have been making books. And they have a very particular character. And I'm going to show you a few examples of them. This is Dia there, and these are some of his books. And he worked with Adonis, with poetry Adonis here. But so some of these books have a very particular character, and they've given, the great scholar Nada Shabut has given them a name, which is dafater. So dafater is the Arabic for notebook. And what's particularly interesting about them is that they speak not only often of poetry, of history, but of destruction as well. Iraq is one of those countries, as you know, which has suffered huge amounts of destruction. And so, quite apart from the thousands and thousands of people who have died, the heritage of Iraq has been so much under threat, as it is in Gaza and elsewhere now. So what's interesting about these artists is that they're taking particular forms and taking a particular subject. So we have a ziggurat there. And that is a kind of magic text. This is an artist who, this is a little box. So it's a book, but it's a box. But it's got broken bits of glass. So it's about the destruction of a museum. This is another Iraqi artist, Mahmoud Abedi, and he's developed a whole series which he calls Compact Home. He's done so many of these. They're like little scrapbooks. And he puts them in a little tin box there. And when I brought this to the conservators of the British Museum, they sort of freaked out, because it's a bit rusty, this box. How can you bring this into the collection? But it was fun to do that. But this idea of putting a book inside a box and calling it home, I think is something incredibly touching. This is another one, Hannah Malala, and she's developed something called the ruins technique. And so she often burns things, and she created these books which were inspired by books which were burnt in the National Library of Baghdad following 2003. Remember, the libraries were looted. And so this is a particular text she's taken called The Conference of the Birds, which is a very famous text. And as you turn the pages, you know, the little bird escape, and she often puts a hoopoe in there, and quite extraordinary. And then the one on the right is called the god Marduk, so this is the god of Babylon. And as you open up this book, the whole inside phrase and the image disintegrates. So it's an incredibly clever way of talking about this. So this is an artist called Fadi Yazigi, Syrian artist. And I'm interested in the way that artists also repurpose books or do different things with books. So he's taken a volume of poetry of the great Lebanese poet from the 19th century, Tamer Mallaz, and which was created in facsimile. So what you see is a facsimile of his poetry, which was published by his grand nephew, I think it is, should be one. So what you have on there is like text in what you would call Diwani script, and Fadi has taken, it's a printed book now, and painted these beautiful figures, which are absolutely his signature style. And then on the right is one of his notebooks. And this is a diary, and all you know that it's a diary is that there's a date on the top. I'm just speeding ahead, I don't know where I'm talking. So this is talking of repurposing. So this is an artist called Aysam Kurbaj, lives in the UK from Syria. Now he found an old diary. He loves finding old diaries, bits of paper, anything. He just uses them in his work. And so he took this old diary, and what you see here is the original words in the diary. And originally it was a diary which was sort of like a photo album as well. So, and it had lost its photos. So what he printed onto them was images of Damascus and carbines and all of this. But then there's a third layer. This is an extraordinary work. It's a proper palimpsest. Because what you see down here are the words of a poem by a famous Palestinian poet called Mahmoud Darwish, and it's called The Color of the Dove. So this is such a multi-layered work. This is, I just have a few more now. This is a very interesting work to me. Again, repurposing a book. This is an Iranian artist called Ala Ibtikar, lives in California. And so he has taken a copy of Nightfall by Asimov, and what he's done is he's dipped it in cyanotype, you know, which makes this amazing color blue, but he's exposed it to the stars. Because cyanotype was this old technique, and you would put the chemicals on it, and then you would expose it to the sun, but he's done it like this. So incredibly inventive. Etel Adnan is one of the great artists, Sadi, died now, but she's one of the most important artists to make books. And they were always unique with her. And so she also was very inspired by the form of the concertina book. She encountered them in America, I think, a colleague of hers had been to Japan and brought them back. And so this looks very, very beautiful, just rather childlike in a way, but actually she's taken a poem by somebody called Nelly Salami Amri, and this is about, this is set in the Lebanese Civil War. The first words are, "Today is a blessed day, it's a day off for the snipers." And so, of course, there are artists here who make amazing books, and this is one lucky enough to come into the collection. Mohammed knows this better than anyone, Mohammed Zishan. I think he's NCA, isn't he, originally? Yeah. Like so many. And what's extraordinary about this book is he's telling a very contemporary story. It's a book, you open it out, and it just has a series of flags. and these are flags of countries which have what you might call an interesting relationship with the United States. But when you first see it, you think it's actually embroidery, but it isn't. And so he's drawn it on this beautiful wasli paper, but it is just so absolutely exquisite, and it looks like it could be a Mughal album because of the gold on it. What you can't see at the bottom here are these amazing vultures that he puts into each one of the pages. And then there's this other beautiful work that is in the British Museum collection. This is Nalini Malani, who, in her words, she's the first Indian artist to make books, and she calls them carriers of experience. Now, she doesn't use text. She's very well known. She's a pioneer of video art, and so she's not that well known for her books. But she calls them carriers of experience. She puts everything in them. Really, history and all the things that she has campaigned about over the years. And this is a Turkish artist called equally impassioned and engaged, who's obviously very concerned about the plight of refugees. So she's made these extraordinary books where she takes photographs that she finds in newspapers, and then they're printed onto gauze and then embroidered over them. So it creates this incredible effect of something that is so painful to look at, but actually so beautiful and delicate through its material. And this second one there, she's bound it in this very heavy metal casing, calling it No Name. And this is the artist who I mentioned makes books in concrete. He's called Hassan al-Haraki. He's Moroccan, he lives in Paris. And this was the idea of, these are all his old school books. And he was brought up at a time of quite a lot of repression in Morocco. And so there's this idea that books were being produced through the Ministry of Education, like frozen in time, not allowing innovation and so on. And so these are absolutely extraordinary books. There are about 40 of them. And I'm going to leave you with this as the last slide, because of course what's going on in Palestine is very much in all of our minds. And this is a book by a very talented Palestinian artist called Khalil Rabah. And he created this book, which is a dictionary. It's called Dictionary Work. So this is a Webster dictionary, and he's isolated the definition of Palestine. This is like the old definition of Philistine, actually. So it comes from the word Philistine. So it's the definition of Philistine, meaning somebody who is ignorant and boorish. And it's a questioning of who are we. And so he's taken the dictionary and he's put nails into it. And I don't know if any of you have ever tried to put something like a nail into paper. It's actually incredibly difficult. So when you look at this book, you feel the incredible pain of this, and I feel it's a very relevant work to be looking at today. So I hope in this kind of, and I've gone over time, I'm sorry, this speed through, I've given you a sense of what these books are about. There are so many different kinds of them, and I think it's a wonderful study. I'm hoping some of the students here will start to make.
I think day of lectures and talks. I hope the students have really found topics being discussed of value and adding to their work. It's really an honor and a pleasure to partner with ADA for the jury seminar. The talks have been, as I said, have been extremely profound and interesting. I'd just like to take a few minutes to quickly introduce the school, the Razia School of Architecture, for you. Just to give an overview of what we do and where we are. The school was set up in 2005 by Dr. Gulzar Haider, our founding dean. The idea behind the school was to create critical thinkers in the field of architecture, in our belief that architectural thought is achieved with hands, eyes, and the mind. with all these three faculties working together. So it was kind of interesting when Professor Olmsted had spoken about colonialism and the act of thinking versus making. We are big proponents of the idea of making. We believe that thinking does lead to making. They're not independent of one another, and without making, there's really no thinking either. So that was kind of interesting for me. Architecture is probably the only profession that is taught in a manner that is completely at odds with the way it's practiced. That's the fun part of architecture. So we expand upon, elaborate, stretch reality so that we can find new norms that we can exploit, or that's a harsh word, that we can sort of extrapolate. We teach our students to solve problems through a process, a design process. Now that process could lead to a building at the end, but that's not a pre-requirement. Design is a way of life that can teach us how to solve issues, whether it's personal problems with friends, how to live your life. It's all design. And that's what we try to inculcate in our students. We encourage multidisciplinarity. We're fortunate to be to partner with and to have our sister school, the Mariam Dal School of Visual Arts and Design. And we are now collaborating with them in our new Bachelor's of Interior Design program, which will have strong linkages with most of the other schools present on this campus, but primarily with SWAG and the textile department. So I think we're in a good place. We've graduated 15 batches of architects. The response from the market has been good. We believe that we are creating thinkers rather than employees for studios. And there is somewhat of a premium for graduates in this school. Wrapping things up, I'd like to say that we've been lucky with all the visitors here from out of Lahore and abroad with the weather. Lahore is a wonderful city full of history, art and culture. And it's the right time of the year to visit. The air quality, which was exorbitantly high just a few weeks ago, is manageable. It's still very unhealthy, so please wear your mask when you go around. But the sky is clear, it's blue for a change for this time of the year, which is lovely. The ADA Design Awards have over the years become a very important milestone engaging and appreciating the correctness of art and design in our society. I feel that the distinguished jury members from Pakistan and beyond bring a unique and fresh vantage point and perspective to sift through the volumes of work that's been submitted and has been shortlisted by the jury. At the end, I'll be quick because we all have to rush to a funeral. I'd just like to end with a couple of words from my favorite modern day scientist, Albert Einstein, who said that what is right is not always popular, and what is popular is not always right. I think that's kind of the job of a jury member for a design award as well. And I wish you all the best in the days to come and the awards night tomorrow. Thank you all for being here. Thank you.